Hey, what is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe, host and producer of the Dr. Vibe Show, saying you're blessed and highly favored. You're a magnet for miracles and your solution for someone's problem. We are jacked, as always, to have you take part by watching the Dr. Vibe Show. Just want to shout out other places you can catch me. You can catch me hosting once a month the Good Men Project show on the Good Men Project, one of the most widely viewed sites online for men. They're getting 3 or 4 million page views a month, and I host the Good Men Project show once a month and co-produce it with Marie Roker Jones. Also, you can catch me on selected posts. I have selected posts up at the Black Life Coaches website, which is the #1 site for Black life coaches in the world. And also you can catch a number of my posts at the Good Men Project. But it's not about me tonight. It's about our guest. And Jean Love Cush is on the line video-wise with us tonight. She's written a wonderful book called Endangered that's very relevant with a lot of things that are going on, especially in America today. So we'd like to welcome to our show, Jean. How are you?
I am fine. I want to thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Well, you know what? It's our pleasure for having you answer my asking for you to come on the show and discuss your book and other things that are very
Abs-
important in, I think, all of America, and I think worldly, not just in America tonight.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right. Can you share a little bit about yourself background-wise?
Well, again, I'm Jean Love Cush, and I am the author of Endangered. And my book Endangered was just released this past July, and I'm very excited about it. It's a very provocative story, very entertaining, and it explores issues of race and justice in the United States. So it's pre-Ferguson, pre-Zimmerman trial, but many of the same issues that we've been discussing appear in the book.
Excellent. Where did you get your influence to write? Where did it all start off?
Well, it's very interesting. My background is in journalism and in law. And when I first graduated from law school, I had the opportunity to work at the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office as a prosecutor. And I wasn't there long, but what I noticed almost instantly was the volume of black men who were being processed through the criminal justice system. And then fast forward some, I had the opportunity to host a weekly radio show when I lived in Fort Wayne. And it was just a very small format, and I would just do local interest stories. And I decided that I was going to do a story on the inner city violence that was taking place in my community. And so that's actually how the research came about for my story. It started off as a segment for a show, and it turned into a book. I cannot hear you.
How long did it take you to write the book?
I would say first draft, it took me about a year, and that's not really accurate because I have two daughters, and I would write when they're in school. I wouldn't write on the weekends. I wouldn't write during the summer. So I would take the opportunity while they were in school to write. And so it wasn't a full year, but over the course of a year, it took me to write it.
Now, you mentioned that you have two daughters. Do you have any sons at all?
I have a stepson. And he's a police officer, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yes, in DC.
So how is the experience writing a lady, black woman, writing about a book about a young black man? And obviously your stepson's a police officer. Was it challenging to be able to relate with the main character of your story when you don't have a son of that age equal to the main character in the story?
No, actually, it was very easy for me to relate to Malik, who is the boy in the story, who's accused of a murder. It's very easy for me to relate to him because I have nephews. I have nephews who have grown up in very similar situations. And I'm very observant. And as I indicated, I was a prosecutor, and so I had some interaction with young males who were on that side being processed through the criminal justice system. So really just being observant, being passionate about this topic, and really caring about what I hear on the news and reading the paper, I really felt like I feel burdened by this in the sense that I feel like I have a responsibility. And just so happened I have two girls.
Okay, well, it's interesting because it sounds like it was one of those moments where it went from your head to your heart.
Absolutely, absolutely. From the beginning, when I read the newspaper or when I watch the news on TV, I'm totally impacted by the stories that I see about what's going on with young black males, whether it's violence committed against them or violence that they are committing. I'm very passionate about what we're going to do to get um, our boys on track.
Excellent. Well, I'm sure not, we wish that many of our viewers and listeners have the book and knew about the book. So can you give a little synopsis about the book to our viewers and listeners?
Absolutely. So again, I would like to say that it definitely probes issues of race and justice in the United States. Um, and it's about a mother named Janae Williams, whose 15-year-old son is accused of a murder. They live in the inner city. She has very little resources, very few resources. She's desperate to prove his innocence, but she doesn't have the money that it's going to take. And that's when a human rights attorney steps onto the scene and he offers to represent her son for free. But there's a catch. He wants to make the argument that black men should be protected, or black males should be protected under the law as endangered species. So she allows him to take on the case. So the case is about her son, getting him off, but also speaking to the larger issue about what's going on with young black males. Can't hear you.
No, so where did the aspect of the endangered species come up? That's a very interesting twist.
Okay, that's very interesting because I've gotten that question a lot. I've gotten the question whether or not I think African American males or black males are they? Do you really think that they're endangered? And I came up with the idea for the story. It's very interesting. I stumbled on a billboard ad down in Atlanta, and it was a billboard ad for abortion, but there was a picture of a beautiful black baby, and then the words right next to it, endangered species. Now, I knew that I wanted to write a story about black males and violence and incarceration, but it just seemed like the perfect title for the story. And having my legal background, I wanted to play with the idea of if we're willing to take steps to protect animals that may live in a hostile environment, why wouldn't we be willing to do the same thing for black youth? So, so I wanted to play with that idea. Now, the Endangered Species Act, as it's written, applies to wildlife. It applies to marine life. It does not apply to humans. But I wanted to work with that idea and see, you know, what I could come up with in terms of an argument about really taking steps to protect them.
I always ask, or many times I do ask when I have conversations with authors, when this conversation piece, when you first started writing this book and you shared it with, who was the first person you shared the idea with and what was their reaction?
Oh, that's easy. I shared it with my husband, and he said, "Jean, this is the one." I remember very clearly because this is not the first manuscript that I wrote, but it is the first one that I got the agent on. It's the first one where a major publishing house said that we want to represent you. We want to publish your book. And his reaction was, Jean, I think that this is the one. This is the one where you're going to get everything that you said you wanted, and that is the representation, the contract, because of the topic. And for me, that was exciting, but I just have so much passion about the topic that I wanted to reach as many people as possible. And so having the opportunity for a major publishing house to get behind it, I thought that that was great.
How much work did it take to get a major publishing house behind your vision?
Well, it's interesting. I went to a writers' conference. I went to a writers' conference met with an agent. He was so with my pitch, he shopped it around for a year. But it really actually wasn't a year because my editor was at a different publishing house. She was at Harlequin, and you know Harlequin, they deal with romance. And so while she liked the story, it wasn't appropriate for where she was. And
Exactly.
so exactly. So when she moved on to HarperCollins, she remembered the story and reached out to him, and so that's how that happened.
With the character Malik
Hmm.
in this story, it sounds so relatable to with so what so many not only young African American boys, young black boys around the world, but also parents
Hmm.
are going through. When you wrote this, how much of your law background went into this writing of this book? How much did it either how much did it enhance the passion to write this book?
Well, I really think that it's my law background, but it's also my upbringing. I grew up in the inner city of Philadelphia. I grew up in a community very similar to Malik and Janae. And so this is not foreign to me. Malik, Janae, the characters are not foreign. She is a mother who's struggling, who cares about her son, only wants the best for him, but needs help in getting the best for him. And so that's a very relatable place to be in terms of we all of us who have children want the best for our children. And so I think that Janae is the mother in the story is very relatable because you see the steps and the struggles that she goes through to help her son. And I think that Malik, wow, when you read the newspaper or you watch the news, you can see him in so many of the young boys who are in the news now. So it's very interesting.
Exactly. The way you've set up the characters in this book, was it purposely done to have a white lawyer represent Malik?
That's interesting. I've gotten that question before too. And was it Roger? Roger is the he is the human rights attorney. And for some reason, Roger was just crystal clear to me when I wrote the story. Now, what I will say is, people wanted to know, well, why Calvin is not Roger and Roger Calvin? And
Right.
I think that in the United States, there's a tradition where African Americans have teamed up with people outside of their culture to bring about change. It happened during the civil rights movement. When people were walking, when people were marching, they were hand in hand, arm in arm with people in the community as well as outside. And really, I don't see a problem with that. I think it's very true to the experience in the United States.
True.
So
Yeah.
that's my position.
No, no, that's fine. I fully understand and fully agree with you that, especially you look in the history of the civil rights movement,
Exactly.
the assistance of many non-blacks to further the civil rights cause were great. Do you remember what was there any challenging parts of the book for you to write and express, or did it flow easily for you?
I would say the most challenging part about writing Endangered was really, I felt like I was pushing against stereotypes about Black women as well as young Black males. It was very, very important that I got that right. I wanted Janae to be a full person. I wanted people to be able to identify with her love for her son. I wanted to definitely send the message that a mother's love transcends all racial and socioeconomic levels. So that was very, very important to get those characters right. I didn't want them to be characters, but I really wanted people to be able to identify with them, to see themselves. Even if your background is not one of living in the inner city, or if you have girls as opposed to sons. I just wanted you to be able to identify with this mother who loves her son and who would do anything to protect him.
Nice, nice. You talk about the motherly love. In this book, there's no father figure.
Mhm. Well, I don't know if I agree with that.
Well, I'm just throwing that out. Is there a father figure in the book in that you wrote? Because obviously there's no father there, but is there a father figure?
I think that when the story opens, clearly Malik's father is not around. But I think that Calvin definitely demonstrates a willingness to be a father figure, and he definitely is a role model. And I think even Roger and the way he interacted with Malik uh, is very much role model, father figure sort of way. Clearly, both of these attorneys they care for this young gentleman and they want to help him. So I would say the actual father is not present, but there are men who are about something, men who care for Malik, who are present in his life.
Hmm. When you finished writing the book and when that first copy came off, what was your emotion?
Giddy.
Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely giddy. This has been writing has been a dream of mine uh, all of my life. All of my life, definitely dating back to elementary school. I decided to go to law school because I wanted to continue my education. It seemed like a very reasonable thing to do, and a wonderful opportunity. But to be able to not only write, but write about issues that really matter to me, because it's not just about writing a book. It's writing about things that are wrong in this world, and and shedding light, and wanting to broaden the conversation. So yes, is absolutely important, and I was very giddy, and I just want to get it into as many hands as possible because I would think that the message is really important. I think it's timely and it's provocative, and while there are a lot of nonfiction books that deal with young African American men who are facing mass incarceration, unfair treatment in the criminal justice system, there really isn't a lot out there in terms of fiction. And so I feel like I'm conveying a lot of the same information by way of statistics, but in a different medium. And so I'm hoping that that I'll be able to reach some of the same people who would read the nonfiction, but maybe broaden that to include some people who are more into fiction.
Okay, great. Is this the best work you've done in your opinion?
In terms of writing or just
Oh, in books, of the books that you've put out, is this your best effort so far? And I said so far because I know there's more to come.
um, so far, I would say yes. And the reason why I would say yes is because I'm very passionate about the topic. I think that we need to do something about what's going on with African American males. When you think about what's going on in Ferguson, even still, they've been protesting because I think that the memorial that was set up for Michael Brown, someone had violated that. They destroyed it, and
Yep.
so emotions are still very high. I was listening to the news today, and there was a gentleman that was shot by a police officer because he was reaching for his ID in a car, and that officer was had to resign from the police force. So there's so much going on. Whether it's the threat of violence from the police or the threat of violence in their own community, the mass incarceration, these are things that we need to be talking about. And so I wanted to add to that conversation with my book, Endangered.
I'm gonna throw a little interesting thought process here. We had spoken and conversed earlier about endangered species, and we do you think that young black men in America are a dangerous species?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not. No. And that's a very interesting, that's a very, very interesting question. I'll answer it this way. I think that African American males, while I do not believe that they'll be wiped off the face of the earth, I definitely believe that there's an endangerment in terms of the quality of life that they have right now. You have a situation where the leading cause of death for black males in the United States between the ages of 15 and 34, it's homicide.
Yep.
You have a situation where, and the threat of homicide is not just in their own communities, it's the threat of the police, this disproportionate expulsions and suspensions from school. There's a whole array of things that are happening that's unfortunately sending the message to black males that we do not value them as a society. And so I think that that's what the problem is. It's very dangerous to send. What's dangerous is to send the message to a group of people that we don't value you, that we don't see your humanity. And I think that when you pull all those things together, the mass incarceration, the high homicide rate, the fact that kids are being pushed out of school through expulsions and suspensions, the high unemployment rate, all of those things together sends the message that we do not value you. And I think that's what the danger is.
Great response.
Mm-hmm.
What has been the initial response to Endangered?
Well, I've received some great reviews. Some very, very positive things. I mean, just right here, I have a few right here. Ebony Magazine, which is a popular one, call it a page turner. But Publisher Weekly said it's engaging and intriguing and compassionate story. The Kirkus Review said that it's frightening and realistic. And I'm going to read this because I think it's very interesting. It says, Cush makes a passionate argument for the defense of young men whose only crimes were being born black in America. And I think that's a good summary of what it is that I was trying to do in this book.
Oh, what you have done in this book. Not trying to, you have done it.
Well, I thank you very much, because you've read it.
Absolutely. When you encounter individuals in your real life journey, such as Malik, what do you share? What do you say to them? What are they saying to you, and what are you saying back to them?
Well, that's a very broad question. It really depends on the context of the conversation that we're having. I think that similar to what Janae says to Malik, for example, in her effort to make sure that he's safe, she would say to him, whenever you encounter the police, be compliant, do what they say, because the result's going to be that your life will be spared. So I think that we have to have a conversation with African American males, and we have to say to them that to ensure your safety, there's a certain way that you need to conduct yourselves when you encounter the police, to try and be compliant. And I say that with some hesitation because the gentleman just recently, he was trying to comply by showing the officer his ID, and that didn't spare him. So it's a very difficult situation because on the one hand, you want to tell them the right thing, but sometimes even when they do the right thing, the outcome is not what it should be. But I think that we have to constantly send the message that we value you. And we need to bring about changes in the school systems. We need to bring about changes in the criminal justice system. We need policy changes in order to really deliver the message. It can't just be words that we value you. It has to be in our actions and in changing the policies. And so I think that's what I say. I say that that I value you. I have nephews. I have nephews who are in their 20s and who are in their 30s. And, it's very important that they be careful, that they take care of themselves, and that we have high expectations also, that we believe in you and know that, you can do great things. I think that those are messages that we want to send.
Excellent. Let's take a look at the character Malik is now in your book. And Malik, if you take a character of Malik maybe 10 or 15 years ago, is a Malik character better, worse, off in today's environment than 10 to 15 years ago, in your opinion?
That's interesting. I don't think that it's improved.
Okay.
Not really.
Why so?
Because we still live in a world in which homicide is the leading cause of death for black males. That is alarming. It's alarming. And it's not just when you skim the surface of that, it's not for black males 15 to 24 in the United States. 50% of those who die were the victims of murder. That's devastating. That is absolutely devastating. That should be on the front page of every newspaper. It should be the leading story on a news broadcast.
Right.
That is an absolutely devastating statistic. The fact that African American men, excuse me, boys, are disproportionately expelled from school when we know that education is the key to upward mobility. And so if they are being expelled from school and being denied an education because of things that back when I was young would send me to the principal office, there's a serious problem with that.
Right.
And we know that with each suspension, it increased the chances of the probability that they will drop out of school. And in addition to that, we know in this country there's an organization called the Brookings Institute. They came out with a report recently that said black men who drop out of school have a 70% chance of being incarcerated in their lifetime. So we have to link all those things together. And that's why I'm talking. You didn't ask me about suspensions and expulsions, but I hope you see how all those things are linked. Incarceration.
Absolutely.
Yeah, incarceration is linked to expulsions and suspensions. You know, it's all connected. And so we need to have this broad conversation about it because they're all connected.
Have you had anyone criticize your book?
Well, I've received some reviews. Most of my reviews have been really glowing, really, really glowing. But when you go on websites like Goodreads.com, I would say I've received a couple of 3 reviews, 3 stars out of 5, maybe 1 or 2 stars. But most of my reviews really have been really, really positive, and so I'm very blessed and fortunate about that. I think that the overwhelming response is that wow, it really kind of speaks to what's going on right now in the country. So.
You were very blessed to put this book out before Ferguson, etc. How has that hit you? Those events in Ferguson and can those they're continuous events. How do those events hit you when you hear and read about them or view them on television?
I'm devastated. I'm devastated about the fact that we live in a society where Ferguson can happen. And what's interesting about it is it keeps happening. Maybe not the absolute outcome of Ferguson, where a young gentleman lost his life. But again, I just mentioned there was a young man who was reaching into his car to get his driver's license, and he was shot. There's a young gentleman in Ohio, I think his last name is Crawford, who lost his life, had a 6-month-old and a 1-year-old. And he lost his life because he was at a Walmart with I think a toy gun, or it wasn't a toy gun, but it was not an actual gun. And so these incidents, they keep happening. They keep happening. And so so it's devastating, and we just have to, we spoke earlier before we actually started this interview, is that we have to be proactive in these conversations and not reactive. We have to keep talking about it and not wait until the next incident. We have to keep talking about it.
In your book with Malik and his mother, what can you convey to our audience are their two each one of the characters' most outstanding characteristic?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I thank you for it. I
Well,
think I'm gonna do Janae last. I think Roger was very passionate. He's the human rights attorney who wanted to bring the case. Very passionate, almost fanatical. I think Calvin, who is the African American attorney, who had to kind of be pulled into the case, but once he was pulled in, he was absolutely committed to it, and was willing to say, you know what, I was wrong for turning my back on my community, but I'm turning back to it, and I want to be a positive force to bring about positive change. And then Janae, she's just the mother who was passionate about her son, willing to advocate for him. And I think that that's a very important message, that as parents, we have the power to advocate for our kids. And she clearly was a mother willing to advocate for her kids. And if she didn't know how to do it, she found people who would do it for her. And so that's very important.
Excellent. And we're beginning to wind down here, and you're great because you're reading my next conversation piece. There are a number of groups that we've mentioned during our conversation here tonight, and I'd like you, before we leave our conversation tonight, your message in regards to the state of young African American men. What's your message to them? So to the first group, your background is a lawyer. What is your message to the legal profession when it comes to young African American men?
Oh, my message to the legal community, whether it's the legislatures at the federal or state level, and to the community, is that, you know, we have to value all life. And we do that by changing policies. We need a criminal justice system that's not about retribution, but that's about rehabilitation. Most defendants who are, or people who go to prison will come out. And if we know that they are going to come out, we need to be about rehabilitating. That's how we improve our society, by rehabilitating them. Not, the focus can't be on retribution. I think that we need to stop criminalizing Black youth. We need to send the message to them that, you know, they are a very important part of our society, and we expect great things from them. And that's a message to the legislature, as well as for school teachers, school systems, and parents. And so it really has to be about, we value every individual in our society. And I do think that we're living in such a time where we need to take extra measures to send that message to Black men. Do we need to invoke the Endangered Species Act? Not necessarily. The whole point of using that was making the argument that sometimes equal treatment is extra treatment. You know, sometimes we have to do extra in order to get to equal. And so I think that that's the message that I would send.
For what about police forces?
You know, I think there are a lot of police officers. I'm sure the overwhelming majority of police officers are committed to their work, and who every morning are committed to a level of excellence that is what they should do. They need to understand that they are there to serve and to protect us, that is their priority, not to criminalize and to harass people who may or may not be doing something. It's interesting, in researching for my book, what I stumbled upon is that in the United States, and I'm only going to speak to the United States, Black males are associated with words like dangerous, violent, criminal. And so when a police officer is making a snap judgment about whether or not this person is dangerous, if they have that, if they are among the majority of the people who have these associations about Black males, then you see how a Ferguson can happen. You see how a Staten Island could happen. And so we need to step back and say, you know, do some training of our police officers. We need to step back and say, you know what, we're here to serve and protect everyone, including Black males. So that's what I would say.
What is your message when it comes to young African American males to non-Black America?
What is my message to non-Black America about African American males?
Yes.
Okay. That they're people, that they have hopes and dreams just like everyone else. That the whole idea of race really is manufactured, but that we're the human race, and that mothers, sons, they have dreams and aspirations just like everyone. The desires just like everyone else. And so if we can start at a place of commonality, what we have in common, then I think it's easy to see the humanity in your fellow man. And so that's what I would say.
And finally, what is your message to Black America for two young Black men?
That I value you, that you are valuable. And the whole point of me writing my book, Endangered, is to say that I see you and that I know that you're valuable. And I think ultimately the message in Endangered is one of hope. And I believe that we will get to a place where a Ferguson will not happen. I don't know when that will happen, but I do believe that the more we talk about it, the more we can move in that direction.
Excellent. Well,
Mhm.
Jean, I'd like to thank you for taking time to share with us tonight. Do you have any final messages before we let you go? And well, actually, when's the next book, by the way?
Well, my next book is actually scheduled to be released in 2016, and it's the title's going to be The Missing, and it's about two girls who go missing under what appeared to be very similar circumstances, and how the law and the media handle the cases differently. So I like to write about what's going on in the world, things that I think that may be a little off, some injustice, and then write about them in fiction. But in terms of Endanger, what I would like to say is it's very provocative, it's very timely, and I hope that your audience will support this book. And so I just have a copy of it here.
Yeah, put it up. I want people to see it.
Copy of it here. And it's available everywhere. You can get it online. You can walk into a Barnes and Nobles and pick it up. And if they don't have it on the shelf, they can definitely order it for you. You can get it on Nook, YouTube, not YouTube, Nook. What's the other one? Kindle. Absolutely.
All right. If people want to contact you or get in touch with you, what is the best way or ways for them to do that?
Well, they can go to my website. My website is my name. It's jeanlovekush.com. Okay. And definitely like me on Facebook at jeanlovekush.com. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and all that information is on the post here with the show. So if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, and especially support for Jean,
Mm-hmm.
please connect with her. So Jean, thank you so much for taking time out of your positive, productive schedule to be with us tonight.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Excellent. It's Dr. Vibe here, your host and producer of the Dr. Vibe Show. I'm also your host and co-producer of the Good Men Project Show. You can catch me regularly on my website, on the Good Men Project website. You can also catch selected episodes of this show at the Black Life Coaches Network Facebook fan page, one of the number one source for Black Life coaches in the world. As always, we like to say you're blessed and highly favored. You're a magnet for miracles and you're a solution for someone's problem. God bless, peace be well, and keep the faith. Bye-bye.
Bye. Mhm.